On June the 8th, 2007, I crawled into the Space Shuttle Atlantis. I would launch with the crew of STS-117 to the International Space Station. I would become a member of Expedition 15. I applied to be an astronaut 15 times. STS-117 reflects my astronaut parking space at the Johnson Space Center. I had one close to the building. That parking space was E-117. June the 8th, 2007 would have been my father's 77th birthday. I would launch into space with a crew led by Marine fighter pilot C.J. Sturkow, and we would dock with the International Space Station. They would spend about 8 to 10 days on the International Space Station, having carried Nebraska's first astronaut to outer space. When they were done with this mission, they all lined up in perfect order, right? The Marine commander said, the commander goes first, the pilot goes second, mission specialist 1, mission specialist 2, right? They all lined up at the hatch, and Clay was there to shake their hand as they departed to go back into Atlantis. As they did that, in their order, the last person to remain was a fellow named Danny Olivas. Danny is a brilliant mechanical engineer, and he was a classmate of mine in the class of 1998, Group 17, the Penguins. And Danny's floating there in 0G, looking at Clay, who's also floating in 0G. And Danny looks me in the eye, he sticks out his hand to shake my hand, and he says, "Man, am I glad I'm not you," and he flew through the hatch. About 20 minutes later, after I've closed the hatch and checked for pressure and made sure there were no leaks and everything, I looked in the big window on the bottom of the lab module, the U.S. lab module, Destiny, and I watched the Space Shuttle Atlantis fly slowly away. I had about 148 days to go with 2 Russians on board as the Expedition 15 crew. But you know, STS-117 was hoping to land in Florida. But they couldn't because of the weather. And when NASA does that, when that happens, right, we're pretty conservative, so that we flew them to Edwards Air Force Base in California, right? The weather's always good in the desert. The only problem with that is it costs us all as taxpayers about $1 million to fly that shuttle back to Florida to get it ready to go up on its next mission. But they flew in, they landed safely at Edwards, and now the problem becomes we have to lift the shuttle up on the big 747 that's converted to become the shuttle carrier aircraft and fly it all the way back to Florida. No problem, they did that. But when we do it, we have to break the flight into 2 pieces. We check the weather, we check air traffic control, we make sure that we go in the easiest way possible that causes the least turmoil for the shuttle on top of that aircraft. So they flew across the United States in 2007 to Offutt Air Force Base. When they got to Offutt, they didn't land immediately. They flew a big 20-mile arc or circle twice around the Platte Valley, where people from the area where I grew up could go outside and see the space shuttle that took Nebraska's first and only astronaut to outer space. Fast forward a little bit to October of 2007. The STS-120 crew was on their way to space to do a lot of stuff, but the only thing I cared about was they were taking me home, bringing me back to my wife and kids. When they got to the space station, we had a really tough mission. Many of you probably don't recall, but a solar array was torn, and we had to do all sorts of planning, much like Apollo 13, to figure out how to stick 2 robotic arms together, put an astronaut in the end, send him out, and repair that solar array. And we did. In typical NASA fashion, we succeeded. Well, by the end of that mission, we were all ready to go home. So now I'm tucked into Discovery on the middeck, laying on my back, with my feet in a locker, ready to go home. And the plan was that we would land at night at the Kennedy Space Center, but Pam Melroy, the commander of STS-120, kind of pleaded with NASA and said, "Hey, look, we've had a tough mission. We've worked our tails off. Everybody's exhausted. is there any way that we could do a daylight landing? Well, NASA got together and they had to talk, right? A daylight landing hadn't occurred since Columbia because we didn't want to fly over the continental United States and risk that disaster again. But NASA, cooler heads prevailed, and they said, okay, Pam, we understand. It's important that you land in daylight. We want everything to be safe. So we are going to alter your trajectory while you sleep tonight such that you will come screaming in over the Pacific Northwest, and we'll send you then for a daylight landing at the Kennedy Space Center. Well, we travel around the Earth at 5 miles a second, 17,500 miles per hour. And we have to get rid of all that energy in order to land at 200 nautical miles an hour at the Kennedy Space Center. Well, how do we do that? It's much like throwing a rock across a pond, right? If we skip it, if we do it well, it skips, and every time it hits that water, that friction takes a little energy away until it finally is captured by the water and sinks to the bottom. Same principle with the space shuttle, except we have no water. We use the atmosphere and the belly of the shuttle to do what we call roll reversals and create that friction to slow us down from 17,500 miles per hour to a velocity that allows us to capture the atmosphere and fly like a glider to the runway. Well, those roll reversals are something that are very important to the safety of the mission. So here we are, screaming in over the Pacific Northwest, traveling at a velocity we have to slow down, and Commander Milroy gets on the microphone and she clicks her mic and she says, Houston, this is Discovery on Air to Ground 1. We're ready to commence the first roll reversal. And she paused over the great state of Nebraska. I didn't ask her to say that. I didn't expect her to say that. But she did. She did because she knew what the state meant to me. So now we're screaming, we're slowing down, right? We're coming down toward Florida, and we do a big high-yakin heading alignment circle out over the Atlantic Ocean to come in on runway 1533. And we landed on November the 7th, 2007. November the 7th, 2007 was the 15th wedding anniversary for my wife and me. Oh, and by the way, if you write 117 or November the 7th as 11/7, it's 117. So, the guy who flew on STS-117 to Expedition 15 to the space station, who also tried to be an astronaut 15 times, who, if you write his name, Clayton Anderson, is how many letters? 15. And who had a 30-year career at NASA. 15 as an astronaut and 15 as an engineer. So everybody needs some pictures, right? So there you are. You're right here. That is the Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum as it sits near Interstate 80 and the Platte River. Here's Ashland, where I grew up, down at the bottom. For those of you on this side, Ashland's right here, the museum's right here. Highway 6 is here, the Salt Creek dumps into the Platte. And I took that picture from 240 miles above the earth. But this is a picture that sticks in my head. My mother told me that I was 6 years old and we would discuss that one day I would become an astronaut. Here in Ashland, they have a stir-up every July. Stir-up trouble, stir-up excitement, stir-up fun, right? They used to close down Main Street and bring in a street carnival. I don't think they do that anymore. Liability, you know. But we had a pancake breakfast. We had bicycle races. We crowned the king and the queen at the football stadium near Salt Creek. And we had a kiddie parade. And in those days, you didn't have Walmart, Costco, or Target. I couldn't buy Spider-Man with the great abs. We didn't have Wonder Woman. But my mom, Alice, she went into the closet and she got a hat box. She cut a space for my eyes, a place for my head. She put a pipe cleaner with a styrofoam ball on top so I could talk to the aliens. She wrapped every single inch of that suit and me in aluminum foil. And number 93 walked in the kiddie parade in Ashland, Nebraska. And you know what happened? I lost. My mom was chapped. I lost to a little girl in a blue gingham dress with a picnic basket on her arm, and what'd she have in that picnic basket? A live puppy. That ain't fair. But they would get me up with my brother and sister and put us on the floor on 1518 Euclid Street in Ashland, Nebraska, 3 miles that way. And they put us on that floor in front of a black and white TV where we watched Mission Control and the Apollo 8 astronauts proceed to go around the backside of the moon. And at that time, right, it was all guys, right? Crew cuts, skinny black ties, white shirts, black pants, the big old black rimmed glasses, right? Pocket protectors. They smoked cigarettes and cigars in the control center. It was a different time. Ladies, we've since fixed that. But here we are listening to the flight director, the king of the room at the time. I need a go, no go for translunar injection burn. Retro, go! Surgeon, go! Cheapo, go! Fido, go! Everybody was go. Then he calls the crew for Apollo 8 and he says, are they go? And I'm thinking, do they really have a choice? I mean, holy cow, they're on their way to the moon, but they gave the go. They went around the moon, and that's the picture that sticks in my brain as a little boy from Ashland, Nebraska. I'm proud of where I'm from and who I am. I'm proud of my family and how they've grown and changed. And now, on May the 5th, 2022, I came home. I came home to lead a place that I believe in. Those are boxer shorts on my head, by the way. I got in a lot of trouble for that photo. Because you know what happens when you wear boxer shorts and you float up in front of a live video feed on NASA TV? The flight director goes, what the hell is he doing? And they've said that before during my time in space. But nobody knew what I was doing except me. And they cut the feed to NASA TV to the entire country. Beep! And then I started to get emails. So leadership, maybe. But we have the power to change a life. We all in this room have the power to change a life. That little boy is just like me. He's the commander of his plastic space shuttle at the Kennedy Space Center's Rocket Park. He's dreaming of saving the world with his crew. The only thing different between that little boy and me when I was his age is I don't sag. But we do have the power to change a life. And right here at the museum, you know, people wanted to know, well, how does being an astronaut allow you to lead a museum? I don't know. Right? I didn't know much about being an astronaut 30 years ago, but that turned out okay. And I'm a firm believer of do not tell me why we can't, show me how we can. And that's the idea I'm trying to bring here to the museum, to my staff, to the community. I want Omaha, I want Lincoln, I want everybody partnering with me, and I'm coming after all of you. Maybe not tomorrow. I'll get to you eventually, but I need your help. We need your help. This is a good museum. I plan to make it great. It's 25 years old next year in 2023. 25 years old. It's a beautiful place. It's an amazing place, but it needs a lot of work. By the way, this photo was taken by one of our employees, Matt Sharon. He runs our cafe just across the way. But I see things differently. I believe a multidisciplinary perspective helps to see challenges in very unique ways. I think differently, if you haven't figured that out by listening to me for the last 20 minutes. Applying leadership and expertise to issues and look for unique solutions. That's what I'm about. I believe in acting responsibly. I have passion and perseverance. I applied to be an astronaut 15 friggin' times. And I think that can create lasting change. And I want to make a difference at home and around the Nebraska community. Nebraskans get her done. Everything in that picture is Nebraska, from the baseball hat from the university to the gloves from Kurt Tomasevich on his gold medal push in the Winter Olympics, to the pants from Cabela's, to the astronaut from Ashland, and the baseball from the College World Series in 2010. So with that, I'm going to say, hey, who laughed? Why does everybody laugh at this? Questions, comments, and cheap shots for the president and CEO of the Strategic Air Command and Aerospace Museum, who is hugely proud to have come home.